Body language. Not to be confused with body language. That's something else. I've read something like 50% of all information that's conveyed through communication is conveyed through body language. Now I have reason to doubt that statistic because I'm not exactly sure how one goes about quantifying how much information is communicated in a certain way. But then again, I've only read that statistic in text, so I'm at most getting 50% of the information. Regardless, body language is an important part of communication, and it's something that can be used to advantage in your writing. Well-written body language can add depth to dialogue. It will help the reader stay grounded in the scene. It can enhance your characterization, and it's a great way to convey emotion. So with that, here are 3 tips for writing body language. See, like this. I'm not sure if this counts as body language. Tip number 1, use body language to enhance dialogue. Now, I'm a firm believer in dialogue that can stand alone. Stand alone, get it? Body language. Dialogue should be written in such a way that you could strip away any adverbs or character reactions or any other description around that and still have the meaning and tone of the dialogue be clear to the reader. That's the ideal situation, at least in my mind. And like most ideal situations, it's impossible to achieve all the time. This is where body language can come in handy. You may be tempted when you're trying to enhance your dialogue or reinforce the emotional state of the dialogue to use adverbs to do that. Like he said angrily or she said sarcastically. These are usually bad, although an occasional one thrown in now and then isn't necessarily a problem, but if they're overused, they are definitely a problem. A much better way to add this information to dialogue is through body language. Having a character pound their fist on the table or collapse into a heap or leap into the air uncontrollably are all good ways to show the emotion behind the dialogue. Now, you should still be striving to write dialogue that doesn't need these things. Your word choice, structure, use of em dashes should all provide clues to the reader about the tone of the dialogue and the emotion behind it. When that's not possible, choose body language to convey this information rather than adverbs or other more telly ways. Body language can also form action beats after a line of dialogue, which tell the reader what character spoke that line of dialogue. These can be useful in times where you want to break up the said bookisms and things like that. Now, there are times when what's said in the dialogue doesn't necessarily represent how a character feels, and in these situations, body language becomes really important. This is known as subtext, or information conveyed alongside the dialogue but not necessarily spoken directly in the dialogue. You might, for example, have a character who is speaking in a very commanding, affirmative way but is actually quite nervous, or you may have a character being submissive and obedient while they are burning with an intense anger inside. I bet we've all been in at least one of those situations. Obviously, in this case, you can't convey these emotions through dialogue because the character is expressly not conveying the emotions they're actually feeling through dialogue. That's kind of the whole point. The dialogue is spoken in a way that is completely opposite to what the character is actually feeling. This is where body language has an opportunity to stand up and show what it can do. Quite literally in some circumstances. Of course, like with anything, it's important not to go overboard. Tip number 2, don't overdo it, watch for repetition, and try not to repeat yourself. The most common problems when writing body language is using too much or using too much of the same stuff. Most writers will tend to play favorites when it comes to body language, and this is something that you should watch out for. Overuse of the same phrases, like a character always rolling their eyes or licking their lips or licking their eyes, is going to annoy many readers. This is especially bad if the same character is constantly doing the same things in every situation. It's something that readers will pick up on, and it will start to get annoying. The body language at this point becomes sort of a cliche. The original meaning has been replaced by annoyance and frustration that the reader is seeing the character roll their eyes for the 500th time. This is usually enough to make the reader frown, furrow their brow, ball their fists, and toss the book onto the ground. So try and avoid that. Another problem is overuse of body language resist the urge to describe every part of a character's physical state with every line of dialogue. We don't need to know how their posture changed, how their eyebrows are changing, their mouth expression, what they're doing with their hands, what they're doing with their feet. We don't need all of that information to be conveyed every time some of it changes. In these situations, you risk losing the reader. They may not necessarily know what the emotional state of the character is because there's so much information being given to them that they have trouble interpreting it all. There's no hard and fast rule here, but generally less is more. The fewer items of body language that you mention will tend to make them more impactful. Too much body language will bog down your dialogue, and if you're writing a lot of body language, it's going to be hard to keep it varied without being repetitive. Speaking of characters, oh crap, I cut the paragraph that would have made that transition make sense. Tip number 3, use body language for characterization. Everybody has a different body. That's why we refer to them as everybody. And everybody has different quirks and preferences for how they use that body in language, among other things. You can convey a lot of information about a character through the way that they use body language, by varying their level of expression, what kind of gestures they use, how domineering or forward they are, and also how their body language relates to subtext. You may, for example, have characters who always say what's on their mind and always convey exactly how they're feeling. You might have others who are a bit more reluctant to speak their mind, but might show what they're actually thinking through dialogue. If body language contributes so much to communication, how a character uses body language will determine how they communicate. If you have a character with a specific physical trait, maybe a beard they are always stroking or something like that, you can use body language to emphasize and remind the reader of that trait. Of course, you also want to avoid repetition here. While it's true that most people have specific physical tics that they repeat frequently, having them repeat it too frequently in the prose can be problematic for reasons that we discussed earlier. So use body language specific quirks sparingly. Make sure that they're used alongside other methods of characterization like dialogue, character thoughts, description, and plain old exposition-laden dumps of backstory information. That last one was a joke. Don't dump character backstories like that. What's not a joke is the fact that I didn't write a good transition to the conclusion. So there you have it. I hope you're not sitting there with a scowl on your face and your arms crossed after watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every Wednesday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.